We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. What if I told you that most of the confusion, attraction, and emotional push-in pull you experience isn't happening out there, but inside your own perceptions? What if the signals you misread, the mixed messages that frustrate you, and the desires you can't quite understand all follow predictable psychological patterns that the Stoics identified centuries ago? Stoicism was never about suppressing emotion. It was about seeing human nature clearly, without illusion. And when you apply that lens to modern female psychology, something powerful emerges. Not manipulation, not tricks, but awareness. Awareness of desire, attention, validation, and emotional leverage. Awareness of why certain behaviors trigger attraction, while others quietly destroy it. Awareness of how your reactions often matter more than your actions. In this video, we're going to strip away comforting myths and replace them with uncomfortable truths. Truths that give you clarity, emotional control, and quiet confidence. This isn't about blaming, it's about understanding. And once you understand, you stop chasing, overthinking, and second-guessing yourself. Watch this video till the very end, because the final insights tie everything together. And if you miss them, you miss the transformation. What you'll learn here won't just change how you see women, it will change how you see yourself. Number 1, emotional control creates subconscious attraction. You've probably heard Epictetus say, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Read that again slowly, because hidden inside that sentence is a quiet force most people underestimate. Emotional control isn't just about being calm or mature. It's a form of power. And power, when held without noise, creates a pull that works beneath words, beneath logic, beneath conscious choice. You feel it before you can explain it. So do others. Especially those who are highly attuned to emotional signals, moods, shifts in energy. When you control your inner world, you stop broadcasting chaos. And when chaos disappears, curiosity appears. That's where attraction begins, not on the surface, but in the subconscious. You live in a world that rewards emotional exposure. Say everything, explain everything, react instantly, defend yourself quickly. Vent, perform. Stoicism asks you to do the opposite, not to suppress, but to govern. There's a difference. Suppression is fear in disguise. Governance is strength made quiet. When you don't react impulsively, when you don't let every emotion spill out unchecked, you create space. And space is magnetic. The mind naturally leans toward what feels grounded, stable, unshaken. You don't need to announce your confidence. Emotional control communicates it for you, silently, relentlessly. Wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That image alone explains why emotional steadiness pulls people in without effort. Here's the uncomfortable truth most won't tell you. Volatility is exhausting to witness. Even when it's exciting at first, it creates subconscious tension. Emotional control, on the other hand, signals safety, depth, and self-respect. When you are not ruled by impulse, you appear rare, and rarity creates value. You stop chasing reactions and start becoming the reference point. People begin to check themselves around you. They adjust their tone. They slow down. Not because you demand it, but because your presence invites regulation. This is not manipulation. This is alignment. You are aligned with yourself, and that alignment gently pulls others out of emotional noise and into awareness. You don't need dramatic displays of indifference. That's still a performance. True emotional control is subtle. It's the pause before you speak. It's the choice not to explain yourself when silence is sufficient. It's knowing what you feel without being owned by it. Seneca said, "The greatest power is to be master of oneself." When you embody that, you become unpredictable in the best way. Not chaotic, but unreactive. People can't read you easily, and the mind is drawn to what it cannot immediately decode. Curiosity is born there. Attraction grows there. not because you are distant, but because you are centered. This is where Stoicism quietly intersects with what many call dark psychology. Though there is nothing dark about self-mastery, what's unsettling is how rare it is. Emotional control removes leverage from the external world. Praise doesn't inflate you, criticism doesn't collapse you, approval doesn't addict you, disapproval doesn't threaten you. When someone realizes subconsciously that they cannot control your emotional state, something shifts. Respect appears. Interest deepens. Not because you dominate, but because you are free. Freedom is deeply attractive. It suggests abundance. It suggests options. It suggests that you choose rather than cling. But let's be clear. This isn't about becoming cold or detached. Stoicism never asked you to feel less. It asked you to feel better, to refine emotion, not erase it. You still experience desire, disappointment, excitement, frustration. The difference is that you don't outsource your balance to external events. You don't let momentary feelings dictate permanent behavior. And when you stop reacting automatically, you start responding deliberately. That shift alone changes how you move, how you speak, how you listen. Your words carry weight because they aren't rushed. Your silence carries meaning because it isn't empty. Everything slows down, and in that slowness, presence becomes palpable. Now let's talk about habit, because attraction rooted in emotional control is not built overnight. It's trained. Start with this: observe before you react. Every time you feel the urge to respond immediately, pause for a breath, just one. That breath is a wedge between impulse and action. In that space, ask yourself a Stoic question: is this within my control? If it isn't, release it. If it is, act calmly. This practice alone begins rewiring how you show up emotionally. Another exercise is voluntary restraint. Choose deliberately not to express every thought or feeling. Not because you're hiding, but because you're choosing relevance over release. Seneca advised rehearsing adversity in the mind. Do the same with emotion. Imagine moments that usually trigger you and picture yourself responding with composure. The mind trains before the body follows. There's also the discipline of detachment from outcome. This is crucial. When you act without being emotionally dependent on results, your energy changes. You become lighter, less needy, less tense. You're no longer trying to extract validation from reactions. Reminded himself daily, I have power over my mind, not outside events. Write that somewhere you'll see it. Read it until it stops being words and starts being posture. When your emotional state is no longer bargaining with the world, you naturally project self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is deeply compelling because it suggests wholeness. Practice emotional economy. Ask yourself, is this reaction necessary? Is it useful? Is it aligned with who I want to become? Most emotional outbursts fail all three tests. When you start filtering your reactions, you conserve energy. That energy shows up as calm intensity, as grounded presence, as a kind of quiet certainty that doesn't beg to be noticed but is felt anyway. Over time, people begin to associate you with stability, with clarity, with control. Not control over them, but control over yourself. And that distinction matters more than you think. Remember, you are not trying to attract by force. You are allowing attraction to happen as a byproduct of order within. When your inner world is disciplined, it radiates outward. No effort, no strategy, just coherence. Epictetus never spoke of charm, yet his philosophy creates it, because emotional control removes desperation from your energy. And desperation repels at a level deeper than words. Calm, on the other hand, invites. It reassures. It intrigues. So start today. Not by changing how others see you, but by changing how you handle what you feel. Train the pause, practice restraint, detach from outcomes. Govern your inner state like it matters, because it does. Emotional control is not repression, it's refinement. And when you refine yourself, attraction follows quietly, naturally, without asking for permission. Number 2, mystery increases perceived value. Mystery increases perceived value because the human mind leans forward when it doesn't have everything handed to it. You already know this intuitively. Think about how little effort the mind gives to what is fully explained, fully available, fully predictable. There is no tension there, no gravity. Stoicism understood this long before modern psychology put it into clinical language. Epictetus warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He wasn't encouraging silence for the sake of deception. He was pointing toward restraint, toward the power that comes from not rushing to expose every thought, every intention, every emotion. When you stop explaining yourself endlessly, you stop leaking value. You stop begging to be understood. You let space do the work. And space, when held with calm confidence, becomes magnetic. You live in a world that rewards noise. Oversharing is praised as honesty. Constant availability is mistaken for warmth. Stoicism pushes you in the opposite direction, not because women respond to games, but because the mind responds to depth. Mystery isn't about hiding who you are. It's about not collapsing yourself into something easily consumed. Wrote, "Be like the promontory against which the waves continually break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That firmness creates unanswered questions. When your reactions are measured instead of impulsive, when your words are chosen instead of poured out, the other person senses that there is more beneath the surface. And what has depth always feels more valuable than what spills everywhere. Female psychology at its core is deeply attuned to emotional contrast. Calm against chaos, presence against absence, certainty against overexposure. When you reveal everything at once, you remove contrast, you flatten yourself. Mystery restores that contrast. It says without saying, there is more here, and it unfolds over time. Stoicism teaches you to slow that unfolding. Seneca advised, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay doesn't just cool emotion, it increases weight. When you pause instead of reacting, when you listen more than you speak, when you don't rush to define or explain, your words gain density. Each one matters more. You don't have to perform, you just have to be anchored. You're not being asked to become distant or cold. Quite the opposite. Stoic mystery comes from inner fullness, not emptiness. When your sense of worth isn't dependent on immediate validation, you stop trying to prove yourself. That absence of need is felt instantly. It creates a subtle tension, a curiosity that pulls attention inward rather than pushing it away. Epictetus said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly." When you release the need to control outcomes, you stop overinvesting in impressions. You become steady, and steadiness is rare. Rare things are valued. There is also discipline here, and discipline is attractive because it signals mastery. A man who can hold his tongue, who doesn't rush to fill silence, who doesn't narrate his intentions aloud, communicates self-command, not through dominance but through composure. Mystery is simply the outward expression of inner order. When you know who you are, you don't need to announce it. When your direction is clear, you don't argue for it. Reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Let that sink in. Being replaces explaining. Presence replaces performance. You can train this. Start with silence but not withdrawal. Practice pausing before you respond, even internally. Notice the urge to clarify yourself, to soften your stance, to fill the gap. Don't suppress it with force, just watch it, let it pass. That moment of restraint is where mystery is born. Another exercise is intentional brevity. Say less than you normally would, but make each word deliberate. Feel how your body reacts when you don't overextend. There will be discomfort at first. That's good. Growth often begins there. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." You can also practice emotional containment. When something excites you, resist the impulse to spill it immediately. When something irritates you, don't rush to express it. This isn't repression, it's refinement. You're learning to choose the right moment rather than reacting to the first impulse. Over time, your emotional energy becomes quieter but heavier. People feel it. They lean in. Mystery isn't loud, it hums. Another practice is removing the need to be fully understood. This is a big one. Stoicism teaches that misunderstanding is not a threat to your character. "It never ceases to amaze me," wrote, "we all love ourselves more than other people but care more about their opinions than our own." Let go of that. When you stop chasing understanding, you stop explaining. When you stop explaining, you allow others to discover. Discovery creates attachment far more reliably than information. There's a deeper layer too. Mystery protects your inner world. Not everyone deserves full access to your thoughts, your doubts, your plans. Stoicism isn't secrecy, it's discernment. You don't open every door just because someone knocks. You choose. That choice itself communicates value. It tells the world that your inner life is not cheap. And what is not cheap is treated with care. You don't need tricks, you don't need manipulation, you need restraint, presence, and patience. Mystery grows naturally when you stop rushing the process, when you trust time, when you allow attraction to unfold instead of forcing it. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Become grounded, become composed, become comfortable with space. The rest follows. So take this with you. Today, say a little less. Pause a little longer. Explain a little less. Feel the strength in that restraint. Mystery is not something you manufacture. It's something that appears when you stop trying so hard to be seen. And paradoxically, that's when you are seen most clearly. Number 3, scarcity triggers. Desire more than availability. Scarcity triggers desire more than availability because the human mind is wired to lean toward what feels rare, restrained, and self-contained. And Stoicism understood this long before modern psychology gave it new labels. When Epictetus said, "If you want to be invincible, make yourself indifferent to things that are not in your control," he wasn't just talking about inner peace. He was pointing to a deeper law of attraction that most people miss. When you are not easily available emotionally, mentally, or energetically, you create space. And space creates gravity. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't flood the world with your presence hoping someone notices. You stand rooted, composed, and selective. That restraint doesn't push people away. It pulls them in. Especially when it comes to desire, availability dulls interest, while scarcity sharpens it. You've probably been conditioned to believe that more effort, more attention, more reassurance equals more attraction. Stoicism turns that belief on its head. Wrote, "Respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you." That sentence alone dismantles the habit of overgiving. When you are always available, always responsive, always eager, you communicate something without saying a word, that your time, attention, and emotional energy are cheap. Not worthless, but common. And the mind does not crave what it can access at will. Desire grows in the presence of uncertainty, boundaries, and self-respect. This isn't about playing games. It's about genuinely having a full inner world that does not orbit around external validation. Stoicism teaches you to anchor yourself internally. When you stop outsourcing your worth, something subtle changes in how others perceive you. You become less readable, less predictable, less dependent, and that independence activates curiosity. Scarcity in this sense is not artificial distance. It is natural selectiveness. You are not withholding to manipulate. You are simply not overextending. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you spread yourself thin, when you try to be everything to everyone, your presence loses weight. But when you are grounded, reserved, and intentional, your presence becomes felt even in silence. Female psychology at its core is deeply responsive to emotional cues rather than words. What you do with your energy matters more than what you say. When you remain calm, self-contained, and unreactive, you signal strength. When you don't rush to explain yourself, justify yourself, or prove yourself, you communicate confidence. Scarcity here means you don't hand out access to your inner world without discernment. You don't reveal everything at once. You don't collapse your boundaries for approval. And that restraint creates tension, the healthy kind, the kind that keeps attention alive. You don't need to withdraw from the world to embody scarcity. You simply need to stop leaking yourself everywhere. Stop responding instantly out of anxiety. Stop oversharing out of nervousness. Stop giving reassurance when it hasn't been earned. Stoicism reminds you that peace comes from self-command, and self-command is attractive because it is rare. Most people are ruled by impulses, fears, and the need to be liked. When you are not, you stand apart. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom is magnetic. Here, where many people misunderstand this principle, scarcity is not coldness. It is warmth with limits. It is presence without desperation. You are kind but not consuming, interested but not invested prematurely, available but not on demand. This balance is what keeps desire alive. When someone senses that your life is full, that your emotional state does not rise and fall based on their reactions, something shifts. They lean in. Not because you ask them to, but because the human mind is drawn toward what feels self-sufficient. Stoicism also warns against attachment to outcomes. When you detach from the need to be chosen, you paradoxically become more rote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you stop trying to control how others feel about you, you reclaim your power. And power, when it is quiet and grounded, triggers desire far more than effort ever could. You are no longer performing, you are being. To internalize this, you need practice. Start with a simple exercise. Observe your impulses. Notice how often you feel the urge to reach out, explain, reassure, or seek confirmation. Don't judge it, just notice it. Then pause. Take one slow breath and ask yourself, is this coming from calm strength or from the fear of losing? If it's fear, do nothing. Let the urge pass. This single habit alone will transform how you show up. Another exercise is intentional silence. Not withdrawal, not punishment, silence as discipline. Give yourself moments where you choose not to fill the space. Let conversations breathe. Let pauses exist. The Stoics believed silence was a form of wisdom. Seneca said, "Nature gave us one tongue and two ears so we might hear more than we speak." When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you act less, your presence becomes more felt. You can also practice scarcity internally by reducing emotional overinvestment early. This doesn't mean being detached or indifferent. It means staying grounded in your own life. Keep your routines sacred. Protect your time. Maintain your standards quietly. When you do this, you don't need to signal scarcity. It radiates naturally. People feel it. They sense that access to you is earned, not guaranteed. Finally, reflect daily. Ask yourself, where did I give too much today? Where did I abandon my center? Where did I act from need rather than choice? Stoicism is built on daily self-examination, journaled not to impress anyone but to refine himself. When you do the same, you sharpen your inner edge, and that inner edge is what creates outer attraction. Scarcity is not a tactic. It is a byproduct of self-respect. When you value yourself, your time, and your emotional energy, others follow suit. You stop trying to be desired and start becoming grounded, and grounded men are rare. In a world addicted to noise, calm stands out. In a world addicted to excess, restraint feels powerful. In a world addicted to availability, scarcity becomes unforgettable. Number 4, validation independence signals high status. Validation independence signals high status because it reveals something deeper than confidence. It shows self-governance. And in Stoic terms, self-governance is power. When you stop outsourcing your worth to reactions, approval, or attention, you quietly step into a position most people never reach. Epictetus warned you about this long ago when he said, "If you want to be invincible, make no treaty with what is outside your control." Validation from others is always outside your control. The moment you rely on it, you hand your center away. The moment you no longer need it, you reclaim something rare, inner authority, and that authority is felt, not announced. It's sensed before it's understood. You don't need to chase recognition to be noticed. In fact, the less you seek affirmation, the more gravity you carry. Validation independence doesn't mean coldness or indifference. It means you are already full before anyone reacts. You are no longer asking, "Was that good enough?" after every move. You act because your values demand it, not because applause might follow. Reminded you of this when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." When you internalize this, your behavior changes. Your tone slows. Your decisions sharpen. Your presence becomes steadier. And that steadiness signals status at a primal level because it suggests abundance, not need. Neediness is loud. Independence is quiet. And quiet confidence is deeply compelling because it implies options. When you don't seek validation, you're communicating, without words, that your life is already structured around purpose. You are not auditioning. You are choosing. That subtle shift rewires how you're perceived. You're no longer trying to be accepted. You're deciding what aligns with you. This is why Stoicism places so much emphasis on inner judgment. Seneca put it plainly, "He who depends on himself for happiness is the happiest." When you depend on yourself, you stop broadcasting insecurity. And insecurity is always sensed, even when hidden behind charm. There's something psychologically powerful about someone who doesn't flinch when approval is delayed, or it signals emotional resilience. It signals that you've trained yourself to remain centered under uncertainty. That's rare. Most people bend, perform, or when they feel unseen. You don't. You remain composed. You don't rush to correct perceptions. You let time do the work. This restraint reads as high status because it mirrors leadership. Leaders don't beg for agreement. They act from principle and let results speak. When you live this way, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a goal. Validation independence also sharpens your discernment. When you're no longer hungry for affirmation, you can see clearly. You stop mistaking attention for connection. You stop confusing interest with alignment. Your standards rise naturally because you're not negotiating your self-respect for momentary reassurance. Epictetus taught you to ask one question above all others. What is in my control? Your values are. Your effort is. Your response is. Approval never was. Once this sinks in, you stop reacting emotionally to every signal. You become selective with your energy. And selectiveness is another marker of status. Scarcity always increases value, especially when it's self-imposed. Now, this doesn't happen by accident. Validation independence is trained. It's practiced daily, often in uncomfortable moments when your instinct is to seek reassurance. That's where the work is. The Stoics didn't preach detachment as theory, they practiced it as discipline. One exercise you can begin immediately is intentional silence. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, justify your choices, or seek confirmation, pause, breathe. Ask yourself whether your values require a response or whether your ego does. Then act accordingly. Each time you choose restraint over reassurance, you strengthen your inner spine. Another practice is judgment fasting. For a set period each day, refuse to mentally rate yourself based on outcomes or reactions. No internal applause, no self-criticism, just action. You do what needs to be done and move on. Lived this when he wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. You don't have time to tally validation points. You have work to do." This practice recalibrates your nervous system. Over time, your mind stops scanning for approval because it learns that nothing bad happens when it's absent. You can also train validation independence through voluntary discomfort. Choose small acts where you deliberately remove external reinforcement. Work without announcing it. Improve without posting it. Progress without witnesses. Seneca called this building inner wealth, the kind no one can take from you. When you prove to yourself that effort still matters even when unseen, you break the addiction to external confirmation. And that freedom changes how you carry yourself. Your posture shifts. Your eye contact steadies. Your reactions soften. People sense that you're not performing for them, and paradoxically, that makes you more compelling. What's crucial to understand is that validation independence doesn't make you distant, it makes you grounded. You listen better because you're not waiting to be praised. You speak more precisely because you're not fishing for reactions. You move through interactions without urgency. Urgency is always a tell. Calm is always commanding. When you stop trying to impress, you start to impress effortlessly. Not because you're trying, but because your nervous system is no longer hijacked by outcome dependence. The Stoics believed that true power was mastery of the self. Everything else was noise. When you embody that belief, you no longer negotiate your worth in the marketplace of opinions. You stand on something internal and unshakable. That's what high status actually is, not dominance, not bravado, but inner sufficiency. When you have it, others feel it. And when they feel it, attraction follows naturally, quietly, without effort. So begin today. Notice where you seek approval unnecessarily. Notice the tension that arises when it's absent. Don't fight it, sit with it. Train yourself to remain whole without external reinforcement. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Validation independence is that mastery. Build it patiently, guard it fiercely, and let your presence speak for you long before words ever do. Number 5, calm confidence feels safer than loud dominance. Calm confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't bang on the door demanding attention. It doesn't need volume, exaggeration, or force. It simply is. And that quiet presence does something powerful inside the human nervous system, especially when it comes to attraction. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology tried to give it names. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line alone explains why calm confidence feels safer than loud dominance. You don't need to perform strength when you embody it. You don't need to signal control when you already have it. And on a deeper, almost unconscious level, this steadiness communicates security, reliability, and emotional safety far more effectively than aggression ever could. Loud dominance is unstable by nature. It relies on external validation, on reactions, on proving something to the world. You can feel the tension in it, the effort, the subtle desperation underneath the noise. Calm confidence, on the other hand, is relaxed because it isn't trying to convince anyone. It doesn't rush. It doesn't posture. You feel grounded in yourself, and that groundedness is contagious. The Stoics would call this not indifference, but freedom from inner chaos. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you move through life without being easily shaken, without needing to dominate conversations or situations, you project a kind of inner order. That order feels safe. And safety is not boring. Safety is magnetic when it's paired with self-respect. You need to understand this clearly. Calm confidence is not weakness, and it is not passivity. It's restraint. It's power under control. Seneca put it bluntly, "He who is brave is free." Loud dominance is often the opposite. It's reactive. It flares up because it's threatened. Calm confidence doesn't flare, it observes. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't feel compelled to prove your worth. You trust your presence enough to let moments breathe. That trust in yourself subtly tells others, "I can handle uncertainty. I can handle emotion. I can handle myself." And when someone feels that from you, their guard lowers. Not because you pushed it down, but because it no longer feels necessary. This is where Stoicism cuts through the illusion of dark psychology. There is nothing manipulative about stability. There is nothing deceptive about emotional regulation. If anything, it's honest. Loud dominance tries to control outcomes. Calm confidence focuses on character. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you live from that principle, your energy changes. You stop chasing reactions. You stop forcing impressions. You become slower, more deliberate, more selective. And paradoxically, that selectiveness increases your pull, because what is not desperate does not repel. What is not needy does not suffocate. What is centered does not threaten. If you want to cultivate this, you must start internally. No technique will save you if your mind is frantic. Begin with a simple daily exercise. Sit in silence for 5 minutes and do nothing but observe your breath. No fixing, no improving, just noticing. When thoughts arise, let them pass without chasing them. This trains you to be comfortable without stimulation, without noise, without performance. Another exercise, practice responding instead of reacting. The next time you feel the urge to interrupt, assert, or dominate a moment, pause for one full breath. That breath is where calm confidence lives. It's a small delay, but it changes everything. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Decide to be composed, and your actions will follow. You should also train your relationship with control. Stoicism teaches the dichotomy of control for a reason. You cannot control how others perceive you, but you can control your conduct. When you stop trying to manage impressions, your body language softens, your voice steadies, your movements slow down. This isn't accidental, it's alignment. Loud dominance is misalignment, it's effort pointing outward. Calm confidence is alignment, it's effort pointing inward. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Calm confidence comes from facing your inner storms and no longer being ruled by them. When you've done that work, you don't need to overpower anything outside of you. There's also a moral dimension here that the Stoics would insist on. True confidence is rooted in virtue. Without virtue, what you call confidence becomes arrogance. Without wisdom, it becomes recklessness. Without temperance, it becomes excess. And excess is exhausting to be around. When you practice moderation in speech, in emotion, and desire, you become predictable in the best way. Predictability here doesn't mean boring, it means trustworthy. Your reactions are proportionate. Your emotions are regulated. Your presence is steady. That steadiness creates psychological safety without you ever having to demand it. As said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, don't mirror chaos. Be the calm. Make this practical. Every evening, reflect briefly on where you sought control instead of composure. Don't judge yourself, just note it. Then ask, what would restraint have looked like here? This builds awareness. Another exercise, reduce unnecessary speech for one day. Not silence, but intention. Speak when your words add clarity, not noise. You'll notice how much strength there is in not reacting immediately, not filling space compulsively. This isn't about playing mysterious. It's about respecting your own energy. And when you respect it, others feel it. Calm confidence feels safer because it signals maturity. It signals that you're not at war with yourself. It signals that you don't need to dominate to feel whole. Loud dominance might grab attention, but calm confidence earns trust. And trust is where deeper attraction lies. Not in intensity alone, but in consistency. Not in force, but in presence. The Stoics weren't teaching you how to impress. They were teaching you how to stand firm. If you adopt that posture, not as a tactic, but as a way of being, you stop chasing approval and start attracting alignment. And that shift, quiet as it is, changes everything. Number 6, detachment exposes true intentions. Detachment exposes true intentions because when you stop clinging, chasing, or trying to control outcomes, Everything that was previously hidden starts to surface on its own. This is not manipulation, it's clarity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned you plainly. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can provoke you by what they say or do. Detachment is not coldness, it's sovereignty. When you no longer need approval, reassurance, or validation, the emotional fog lifts. You stop projecting desires onto others and start seeing what actually is. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can only understand psychology when you are no longer enslaved by it. The moment you emotionally step back, people reveal themselves without realizing it. Not because you're testing them, but because your stillness removes the pressure that forces masks to stay on. When you're attached, you distort reality. You read meaning where there is none. You ignore signals you don't want to see. You warmth and rationalize indifference. Attachment creates noise. Detachment creates signal. Wrote, you see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. That sentence alone dismantles most confusion around attraction and desire. When you're detached, you're no longer trying to be chosen. You're observing, you're listening. You're present without leaning forward emotionally. And in that space, intentions surface naturally. Energy shifts. Effort becomes visible. Consistency speaks louder. Silence speaks even louder. You don't need to interrogate or demand clarity. Detachment becomes the filter that separates genuine interest from fleeting attention. What Stoicism reveals is that desire reacts to absence of need. Not absence of presence, absence of need. When you don't need a response, a reaction, or a result, you stop unconsciously bargaining. You stop performing. And that's when dynamics recalibrate. The ancient Stoics never spoke about attraction the way modern culture does, yet the principles apply perfectly. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Emotional bravery is stepping back without resentment. It's allowing space without fear. It's letting others move as they will, not as you hope they will. And paradoxically, that freedom exposes what words often conceal. Desire either leans in or it doesn't. Intention either shows up or it fades. Detachment removes your interference from the equation. You're not withdrawing to punish. You're withdrawing to see clearly. That distinction matters. When detachment is rooted in self-respect rather than strategy, it becomes magnetic in a quiet way. You stop asking, "What do they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of how this feels?" That shift changes everything. You no longer chase clarity, you allow it to arrive. And clarity always arrives when you stop forcing movement. Stoicism teaches you to align with reality, not wrestle it. As reminded himself daily, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. Detachment brings you back to yourself, and when you are anchored, others reveal how they truly stand. There is also a darker truth here, one most people avoid. Attachment invites ambiguity. Detachment dissolves it. When you are overly invested, mixed signals survive because you're subconsciously invested in their survival. When you are detached, mixed signals collapse under their own weight. You don't argue with them. You don't analyze them endlessly. You let behavior speak. And behavior always speaks. Stoicism isn't about emotional suppression. It's about emotional discipline. You feel fully, but you don't surrender control. You don't let desire hijack perception. That's why detachment sharpens intuition. Not mystical intuition, clear perception. You begin to sense alignment or resistance without dramatizing either, and that calm awareness is deeply grounding. To practice this, start with a simple daily discipline. Each morning, remind yourself, "I control my effort, not outcomes." Write it down, say it slowly, let it sink in. Throughout the day, whenever you feel the urge to seek reassurance or mentally chase a reaction, pause, breathe once. Then ask yourself, what happens if I do nothing right now? That question alone builds detachment. Another exercise, observe without labeling. When emotions arise, don't call them good or bad, just notice them. Seneca advised, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Detachment shrinks imagination back to its proper size. Another powerful practice is voluntary restraint, not avoidance restraint. Delay responses, reduce emotional immediacy, give yourself space before reacting. This isn't a tactic, it's training. You are teaching yourself that urgency is optional. Over time, your nervous system calms, and when you are calm, your presence changes. You stop leaking need. You stop trying to secure outcomes, and that absence of desperation is felt immediately, even if unspoken. Stoicism calls this freedom from destructive passions, not freedom from feeling. You still care, but you're no longer controlled. Detachment also protects you. When intentions are unclear, distance prevents self-betrayal. You stop explaining away inconsistency. You stop investing where there is no reciprocity. This is not cynicism, it's discernment. Epictetus was blunt about this. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Detachment is embodiment. It's allowing actions to reveal truth without confrontation or force. You don't need to corner anyone into honesty. Time and space do that for you. Ultimately, detachment returns you to power, not power over others, but power over yourself. And that is the only power Stoicism ever advocated. When you are centered, grounded, and unattached to outcomes, you become harder to deceive and easier to respect. Intentions rise to the surface because there is nothing for them to hide behind. No pressure, no chasing, no emotional bargaining, just clarity. And clarity, once seen, cannot be unseen. So practice stepping back. Practice not reaching for certainty too quickly. Practice trusting that truth reveals itself when you stop interfering. As wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Detachment may feel uncomfortable at first. Let it. Growth often does. But with time, you'll realize that detachment doesn't cost you connection, it refines it. And in that refinement, you stop guessing, stop hopping blindly, and start seeing reality as it is. Calm. Honest, unmistakable. Number 7. Self-mastery outshines external success. You're taught early on that success is something people can see. Status, results, applause, titles, numbers. But Stoicism quietly dismantles that illusion and replaces it with something far more unsettling and far more powerful. The idea that what truly commands respect, attraction, and psychological gravity is not what you achieve, but what you master within yourself. Epictetus said it plainly, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Read that again. Freedom, influence, presence, they all begin inside you. And when you start to grasp this, you begin to understand something subtle yet profound about female psychology and hidden desires. External success may impress, but self-mastery creates safety, intrigue, and depth. One can be admired, the other is felt, and people are wired to respond to what they feel more than what they see. You can sense the difference immediately when someone is ruled by impulses versus someone who governs them. Stoicism teaches that the highest form of power is restraint, not suppression, not emotional numbness, but conscious command. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength changes how you move, how you speak, how you remain steady when things don't go your way. You stop chasing reactions. You stop performing. You stop leaking neediness through tone, posture, and timing. And here's the part most people miss. Self-mastery removes desperation from your energy. Where there is no desperation, there is calm. Where there is calm, there is trust. And where there is trust, attraction follows naturally, without effort or manipulation. What draws people in isn't the noise of achievement, but the quiet certainty of someone who is not trying to prove anything. Stoicism calls this self-sufficiency. When you no longer depend on external validation to feel whole, you become psychologically grounded. You listen more. You react less. You pause before responding. You're not in a hurry to fill silence or defend your ego. That restraint creates space, and space is magnetic. Seneca warned, "He who is brave is free, And bravery here is not loud courage. It's the courage to sit with discomfort, to not chase pleasure compulsively, to not flee from boredom, rejection, or uncertainty. This kind of bravery signals emotional maturity at a level most people never reach. You begin to realize that external success without inner order actually works against you. It amplifies insecurity instead of resolving it. Stoicism exposes this contradiction mercilessly. You can have achievements and still be ruled by impulses, moods, and fears. You can win externally and still lose control internally. And that loss is visible, even if no one can articulate it. Stoics understood that character leaks through behavior. It shows up in how you handle frustration, how you respond to boundaries, how you deal with delays, how you manage desire. Self-mastery refines all of this. It slows you down in the best way. You become deliberate, intentional, hard to shake. And psychological steadiness is far more compelling than any surface-level success. There's also something darker and more honest that Stoicism reveals. People are drawn to those who cannot be easily controlled, not in a rebellious sense, but in a grounded one. When your emotions are not easily provoked, when praise doesn't inflate you and criticism doesn't collapse you, you become unpredictable in a powerful way. You are no longer reactive. You choose. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That line cuts deep because it points to ego death. The moment you stop needing to look impressive is the moment you start becoming impressive at a level that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the nervous system. Now, this isn't about detachment turning you cold. Stoicism was never about emotional absence, it was about emotional leadership. You still feel desire, attraction, interest, and curiosity, but they don't own you. You own them. That difference changes everything. Instead of chasing outcomes, you focus on conduct. Instead of asking, "What do I get?" you ask, "Who am I becoming?" And ironically, when you stop trying to extract value from interactions, people sense it. There's no pressure. No agenda, just presence. And presence is rare. Presence is felt. Presence is remembered. To live this, you need practice, not theory. Start with awareness. Each day, notice where your impulses try to rush you toward validation, reassurance, attention, pleasure. Don't judge it. Observe it. Remind it himself daily, "Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence." Not to become bitter, but to remain prepared. You can do the same. Anticipate emotional triggers so they lose their power. When desire flares up, pause, count your breath. Ask yourself whether acting now strengthens or weakens your inner command. This single pause, repeated daily, builds more self-mastery than years of external striving. Another exercise is voluntary discomfort. Stoics practice this deliberately. Skip small comforts. Delay gratification. Choose the harder option when it builds discipline, not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself that you are not dependent on ease. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare." In modern terms, it's about training your nervous system to stay calm without constant stimulation. When you can remain centered without comfort, approval, or certainty, you radiate an unspoken strength. You become internally rich, regardless of external conditions. You should also practice emotional economy. Say less than you feel, react less than you could. Let moments breathe. Silence is not weakness, it's control. When you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, when you stop emotions to be understood, you reclaim authority over your inner world. And that authority is sensed instantly. You're no longer broadcasting need. You're grounded, anchored, self-directed. Ultimately, Stoicism teaches you that attraction is a byproduct, not a goal. The moment you aim directly at it, you lose the very qualities that create it. Self-mastery shifts your focus inward where real leverage exists. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop negotiating with your impulses. You stop being dragged by outcomes. And in doing so, you step into a form of quiet dominance, not over others but over yourself. That's the kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to, it's felt. And once felt, it's rarely forgotten. Number 8. Unreactive behavior tests emotional strength. Unreactive behavior isn't silence and it isn't weakness. It's restraint with awareness. It's the quiet power of choosing not to be pulled into every emotional current that brushes against you. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned you that it is not things themselves that disturb us but our judgments about them. When you don't react impulsively, you're showing that your inner world is governed, not hijacked. And whether people admit it or not, this composure is felt immediately. Emotional volatility repels because it signals fragility. Emotional steadiness attracts because it signals strength. When you don't rush to defend, explain, or prove yourself, you communicate something without saying a word. You trust yourself enough to remain centered. At a psychological level, unreactive behavior creates tension in the mind of the observer. Not chaos, tension, the kind that provokes curiosity. When emotions are thrown at you and they don't stick, the other person is forced to confront their own expectations. They expected a spark. They expected resistance. They expected you to wobble. Instead, they're met with calm. This calm acts like a mirror. It reflects insecurity back to its source and paradoxically makes you appear grounded and self-sufficient. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you embody this, you're demonstrating mastery over the one domain that truly matters. You live in a world that rewards instant reactions, quick replies, quick defenses, quick emotional displays, but Stoicism teaches you to pause, and that pause is where your power lives. When you don't immediately react, you buy yourself space, space to choose, space to remain dignified, space to act instead of perform. This isn't emotional suppression, it's emotional discipline. There's a difference. Suppression is fear-based. Discipline is strength-based, and people intuitively sense which one you're operating from. When you remain unshaken, you communicate that your sense of self isn't dependent on external validation or emotional theatrics. Unreactive behavior tests emotional strength because it forces you to sit with discomfort. The urge to react is often the urge to escape unease. Stoicism asks you to stay, to breathe, to observe. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Every time you resist reacting, you're loosening the grip that emotions have over you. You're proving to yourself that you don't need to win every emotional exchange to maintain your worth. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Calm stops being an effort and starts becoming your baseline. From a psychological perspective, unpredictability paired with stability is powerful. When you're emotionally unreactive, you're no longer easy to read, manipulate, or provoke. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you solid. You don't broadcast insecurity through exaggerated reactions, nor do you seek reassurance through emotional displays. Instead, you allow silence, stillness, and presence to do the work. This unsettles people who rely on emotional control dynamics, and it draws in those who value depth and self-mastery. You're no longer playing the game, you're standing above it. Stoicism never told you to be indifferent to life. It taught you to be selective. Selective with your energy, selective with your emotional investment, selective with what deserves a response. When you react to everything, you cheapen your attention. When you choose carefully, your presence gains weight. Epictetus reminded you, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not reacting often looks like weakness to those who don't understand inner strength. Let them misunderstand. Your job isn't to perform strength, it's to embody it. This is where habits matter. Unreactive behavior isn't a switch you flip once. It's a muscle you train. Start by practicing the pause. When you feel the urge to react, count your breath. Not to calm down, but to create space. In that space, ask yourself one simple question. Is my reaction serving my values or my ego? you'll be surprised how often it's the latter. Another practice is mental reframing. Instead of labeling situations as provocations, label them as tests. Tests of composure, tests of patience, tests of self-respect. When you see them this way, you stop feeling attacked and start feeling challenged, in a way that sharpens you rather than drains you. You can also practice voluntary discomfort. Stoics believed in training the mind through intentional restraint. Choose moments to withhold reaction even when it feels justified. Not forever, just long enough to prove to yourself that you can. Write down what you felt, not what you did. This builds awareness without judgment. Over time, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Your emotions become quieter, not because they're weaker, but because they trust you to handle them. There's a deeper layer here. Unreactive behavior signals that you are not emotionally needy. Neediness isn't about desire, it's about dependency. When you react strongly, you often reveal that something external has too much control over your internal state. Stoicism teaches you to reclaim that control, to desire without attachment, to care without clinging, to remain warm without being reactive. This balance is rare, and rarity is magnetic. Remember, the goal isn't to appear mysterious or detached. The goal is to be rooted. When your reactions are measured, your words carry more weight. When your emotions are regulated, your presence feels safe and strong. People trust what feels stable. They lean toward what doesn't waver at every emotional breeze. And this stability begins with you, alone, practicing restraint when no one is watching. Wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In modern terms, the best demonstration of strength is not to mirror emotional chaos. It's to transcend it. When you stop reacting impulsively, you stop giving your power away. You reclaim authorship over your inner life. And that, more than any display or explanation, communicates depth, confidence, and quiet authority. So start small. Pause longer than feels comfortable. Speak less than feels necessary. React only when it aligns with who you're becoming. This isn't about control over others. It's about mastery over yourself. And once you taste that mastery, you won't want to go back. Number 9, purpose-driven men. Evoke deeper curiosity. When you live with purpose, something subtle but undeniable happens around you. You don't announce it. You don't advertise it, yet people feel it. And when it comes to female psychology, this quiet gravity stirs a deeper kind of curiosity, the kind that doesn't rush, doesn't beg for clarity, and doesn't fade quickly. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology tried to measure it. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Purpose-driven men don't explain themselves endlessly. They move. They act. They orient their lives toward something higher than approval, and that alone changes how you are perceived. You see, curiosity isn't sparked by loudness or performance, it's sparked by depth. When your days are structured around a personal mission, your energy stops leaking into external validation. You're no longer scanning rooms for reactions or measuring your worth through attention. You're occupied, grounded, directed. And paradoxically, this absence of need becomes presence. Seneca warned that he who lives for others is a slave to others. When you stop living to impress, you begin living in a way that invites intrigue. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because your inner world has weight. From a Stoic lens, purpose is alignment with reason and virtue. It's not chaos disguised as ambition. It's order. And order is deeply attractive because it signals safety at a psychological level. A man who knows where he's going, even imperfectly, communicates stability without words. There's a calm in him, a sense that his emotions are governed, not suppressed, and his desires are chosen, not compulsive. That calm doesn't scream for attention, but it pulls it in. Curiosity grows in the space where predictability ends and meaning begins. When you lack purpose, conversations drift toward seeking affirmation. When you have purpose, conversations feel anchored even when silence enters. And silence, when carried by intention, is powerful. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Purpose-driven men are comfortable being misunderstood in the short term because they're committed to something long-term. That patience registers. It suggests depth yet to be discovered. And depth always invites exploration. There's also something important happening internally when you live this way. Your nervous system settles. You're not chasing emotional spikes. You're not hooked on outcomes. This emotional regulation prized by the Stoics creates contrast. You respond rather than react. You don't overshare to fill space. You don't rush to define yourself. Curiosity thrives when answers are earned, not handed out. And when your life has direction, you don't rush anyone toward conclusions about you. You let time do its work. Purpose also sharpens your boundaries. You say no more often, not aggressively, not defensively, but cleanly. Taught that self-mastery is the foundation of all influence. When you respect your time and energy, others sense it. Boundaries create shape, and shape creates intrigue. A life without edges is forgettable. A life with structure invites questions. What drives you? What keeps you steady? Why are you unmoved by things that unsettle others? Now, this isn't about manipulation, despite the darker framing of psychology. It's about alignment. When your purpose is real, you're not trying to evoke curiosity. You're too busy living. That's what makes it effective. The Stoics never chased desire, they refined themselves. Desire followed naturally. As reminded himself, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Purpose refines thought. Refined thought shapes behavior. Behavior over time becomes character. And character is endlessly fascinating. To cultivate this, you need practice, not theory. Start with a daily purpose audit. Each morning, ask yourself one simple question. What am I moving toward today that has nothing to do with approval? Write it down. One sentence. That's enough. Then act in alignment with it, even imperfectly, especially imperfectly. Purpose isn't about flawless execution, it's about consistent direction. Another exercise is voluntary discomfort, a core Stoic discipline. Choose one small discomfort daily. Wake up earlier than you want. Train when you feel resistance. Sit in silence without stimulation. Seneca believed this prepared the mind for adversity and sharpened self-respect. When you prove to yourself that you can act without comfort, your confidence stops depending on external reassurance. That inner solidity changes how you carry yourself. People feel it before they understand it. You should also practice intentional silence. Not withdrawal, not avoidance, but restraint. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask whether clarity is necessary or whether ego is asking to be seen. Epictetus advised speaking less and doing more. Silence, paired with consistent action, builds an aura of depth. It leaves space for curiosity to grow naturally. Finally, reflect nightly. Ask, did I act according to my values today, or did I bend to be liked? No judgment, just observation. Stoicism is not about harsh self-criticism, it's about honest self-assessment. Over time, these reflections rewire your priorities. You become less reactive, more deliberate, less performative, more grounded. And that grounding is what evokes deeper curiosity. Not tactics, not lines, not strategies. Just a man who knows why he wakes up, where his energy goes, and what he refuses to betray in himself. When you live like that, you don't chase attention. You command it quietly. You don't seek fascination, you become it. Number 10, silence often communicates more power than words. Silence is often misunderstood. You were probably taught that power comes from saying the right thing at the right time in the right tone. That confidence is loud. That presence must announce itself. Stoicism gently dismantles that illusion. Wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Hidden in that line is a quieter truth. You don't need to react to be powerful. You don't need to explain yourself to be felt. And when you truly grasp this, something shifts in how others perceive you, especially at an emotional and psychological level. Silence, when chosen rather than forced, becomes a form of self-mastery. Not empty silence, not avoidance, but grounded, intentional restraint. You see, most people speak to fill space, to manage anxiety, to seek validation, to control how they're perceived. Stoicism asks you to reverse that impulse. Epictetus advised, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." When you stop rushing to respond, when you don't scramble to prove or impress, you signal something rare: inner sufficiency. And inner sufficiency is magnetic. Silence creates contrast. It slows the moment down. It invites curiosity. It forces others to project meaning instead of being spoon-fed explanations. This is not manipulation. It's discipline. It's you choosing not to leak energy unnecessarily. At a deeper psychological level, silence communicates emotional control. When you are calm enough not to react impulsively, you demonstrate that your emotions do not own you. Stoics believe that the person who governs himself is stronger than one who conquers a city. When you pause instead of rushing into words, you are practicing that governance in real time. You are telling the world without saying it, "I am not ruled by urgency." And urgency is often read as neediness. Silence dissolves that. It replaces it with steadiness, with gravity. There's also a subtle truth most people miss. Words are common. Silence is rare. Anyone can talk. Few can hold space without filling it. When you become comfortable in silence, you stop chasing reactions. You stop over-explaining. You stop defending your choices reflexively. Seneca warned, "He who talks too much is often the one who knows least." But beyond knowledge, excessive speech often reveals insecurity. Silence, on the other hand, implies that you trust your presence to speak for you. You don't need to convince. You allow others to arrive at their own conclusions. And psychologically, people value what they feel they discover themselves. Stoicism never encouraged passivity. This is important. Silence is not withdrawal, it's not emotional absence, it's precision. You speak when your words add weight, not noise. You hold back when words would cheapen the moment. That restraint creates depth. It makes your eventual words land harder, linger longer. When you speak less, you are listened to more. Not because you demand attention, but because you've trained people to notice when you finally choose to speak. Pay attention, you'll notice how silence also protects your inner world. Every unnecessary explanation drains you. Every reactive comment pulls you outward. Stoicism teaches you to return inward again and again, to anchor yourself in what you can control, your judgments, your actions, your responses. Silence becomes a shield. It keeps your intentions private. It prevents your plans from being diluted by outside opinions. As Seneca said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Choosing silence is an act of mastery. There's something else happening beneath the surface. Silence invites projection. When you don't reveal everything, the mind of the other person fills in the gaps. This is basic human psychology. Mystery isn't created by tricks, it's created by boundaries. When you don't overshare, when you do narrate every thought, you allow space for intrigue. Stoicism aligns perfectly with this because it values inner life over outward display. You don't perform your depth, you live it. And depth, when quiet, is often felt more intensely. Now this requires courage. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind will urge you to speak, to clarify, to smooth things over. Resist that impulse, not with arrogance but with composure. Remind yourself of Epictetus' words. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Sometimes silence will be misinterpreted. Let it be. Stoicism teaches you to release the need to control perception. You are responsible for your character, not for how it's interpreted in every moment. To embody this, you need practice. Start small. Practice pausing before you respond, even when you know exactly what to say. Count a slow breath, feel your body. Let your words rise from calm instead of reflex. Another exercise, reduce your explanations by half. Say what is necessary, then stop. Notice how often the urge to add more comes from discomfort rather than clarity. Train yourself to sit with that discomfort. It will pass. What remains is presence. You can also practice intentional silence daily. Spend time without consuming noise. No talking, no input, just observation. Often retreated inward, reminding himself that tranquility comes from within. This habit strengthens your comfort with quiet, so silence no longer feels like a void you must fill. It becomes a place you can stand firmly. Another powerful exercise is restraint under emotional charge. When something triggers you, say nothing at first, not forever, just long enough to regain sovereignty over your response. Ask yourself, is speaking right now an act of wisdom or an act of impulse? Stoicism demands honesty here. Silence, when chosen consciously, is never weakness. It is delayed strength. Over time, this changes how you carry yourself. Your energy becomes less scattered. Your words become fewer but sharper. Your presence feels heavier, calmer, more grounded. You stop chasing validation through expression. You let silence do part of the work. And paradoxically, the less you try to be seen, the more you are felt. Remember this, silence is not about withholding yourself. It's about revealing yourself selectively. Stoicism is not about suppression, it's about alignment. When your inner world is ordered, your outer expression naturally simplifies. You don't need constant words to assert your value. As reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Often, being one requires no words at all. So take this with you. Let silence become a habit, not a tactic. Let it ground you, not distance you. Speak when your words serve truth, clarity, or virtue. Be silent when they would only serve ego or fear. In that balance, you'll find a quiet authority that no volume can replace. If you've made it this far, understand this. What you've just learned isn't about manipulation, tricks, or chasing approval. It's about mastery. Stoicism teaches that the man who controls his emotions, his reactions, and his purpose becomes magnetic without trying. When you stop seeking validation, you start commanding respect. When you remain calm in chaos, you stand out in a world addicted to emotional noise. Most men will hear these ideas and forget them tomorrow, but a few will apply them, and those are the ones who quietly win in life, attraction, and self-respect. Female psychology doesn't respond to neediness or performance. It responds to strength, certainty, and emotional discipline. And that's exactly what Stoicism gives you. So the real question is this: will you go back to old habits, or will you walk forward with a mindset that puts you ahead of 99% of men? If this video challenged your perspective, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what stood out the most. More importantly, revisit these principles, live them daily, and watch how everything, especially how people respond to you, begins to change.